had a great breakfast. We had great workshops this morning. We're having a great lunch, and we're going to have great speakers, and then we're going to have great workshops this afternoon, and we're going to then have a fabulous dinner tonight where we all can come together as friends, break bread, talk to each other, and really think about how next year, although this has been a tremendous success, how next year we can make it even better. So I appreciate all of you being here for lunch. I'd like to introduce some of the members that are here. We have, now this is an interesting combination, Greek and Cuban. Now, you know I'm Greek, and Nicole Meliotakis, I have problems with Greek names, is father Greek, right, Nicole? And your mom, who's here, Cuban. So we thank you for being here. A good friend, and he will be speaking later, has done so much for the Latino community and beyond the Latino community. It's a pleasure to introduce Guillermo Unidad, Assemblyman. Thank you. A good friend who was in the Assembly and then went out to the private sector and has been very, very successful in his own life, a former Assemblyman, Roberto Ramirez. Roberto, thank you for being here. Some of the senators that are here, and we appreciate your being here. We have Senator Diane Savino, who hosted one of the panels today. Senator Jeff Klein. Senator Klein will be moderating the panel this afternoon. Senator John Flanagan from Long Island. John. Senator Jack Martins, who will be up here shortly, from Nassau County. And from Suffolk County, and I think on Long Island he has the largest Latino population, Senator Lee Zeldin. So at this time, I'd like to ask Senator Jack Martins from Mineola in Nassau County to come up and introduce our first speaker. Jack, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Muito boa tarde. It is a pleasure to be here today. I want to start by congratulating Senator Skelos. Dean, thank you. And the Hispanic Federation for this wonderful weekend where we get to really come together and make a difference for so many millions of families and persons throughout New York State. Like many of you, I had the opportunities that were provided to me because of hardworking immigrant parents who came to this country, worked hard. In my case, my parents immigrated from Portugal. Worked hard, built a life, focused on education, made sure that education for myself and my brothers and sisters wasn't an option. It was a requirement. It was never in doubt. And frankly, I see a lot of those same themes as we've discussed the topics today, and I'm sure we'll be touching on some of these themes as we go through our forums this afternoon. The need for not only economic opportunities, but understanding that our economic opportunities come from our educational opportunities and our focus on providing a better life for our children and for future generations. It is my privilege this afternoon to introduce a gentleman who will be presenting a few words who comes from the community, George Silva Puris, has served as the United States Small Business Administration Region 2 Administrator, which is headquartered right here in New York City. It encompasses New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And in those areas, there are 2.7 million small businesses over which he has oversight. From 2005 to 2008, George has served as Chief of Staff to the Governor of Puerto Rico, Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Industrial Development Company, President of the Economic Development Bank for Puerto Rico, and is Puerto Rico's Secretary of Economic Development and Commerce. So you want to talk about someone who knows firsthand what it takes not only to influence and encourage economic development, but has done it as part of the Hispanic and Latino community, George Silva Puris. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that warm introduction. We were speaking a little bit of Portuguese earlier, since my last name, Silva, is very common in Portugal and Brazil, so we practice a little bit of Portuguese. I want to, first of all, thank the Senator and the entire Senate and all its representatives for this fantastic opportunity. This is precisely the type of event we need to hold more of, to spread the word, to become much more effective at creating awareness among the Hispanic population, particularly Hispanic business owners, about the opportunities out there. I also want to thank the Hispanic Federation. Lillian, you, as always, do a great job, and I truly appreciate your support of this event. And as I said, we need to do much more of it. Why? And what I want to share with you this afternoon is what can we do at the SBA? As the Senator mentioned, I oversee Region 2, which has over 2.7 million small businesses. And many, many of those small businesses are Latino-owned. As a matter of fact, the information, the data that we have is that it's one of the fastest growing segments of the small business population is Latino. And Latina. Believe it or not, that is the fastest growing. Women, many of them single moms who are starting their businesses, and they need our help. They need not only the help of the federal government, they need the help of the state government and the city government. And my message here, if one thing I would like to communicate is the fact that we need to work together. As federal, state, and city, we have so much to offer, but it is frankly so difficult for those Latino and Latina business owners to know what we have to offer. So what I want to do today is share a little bit of that information. What can the SBA do? What can the state via Empire State do? What can the SBS in New York City do? Because those are fantastic resources. For example, at the SBA, we focus on three primary areas, what we call the 3 C's. The first C stands for capital, or access to capital. The second C stands for counseling opportunities, and I'm not talking about marital or psychological, I'm talking about business counseling opportunities and help. And the third C is contracting opportunities with the federal government. And if you look at all three areas, those are critical to any business owner in America. You know the facts, you know the data. As a matter of fact, most of the businesses fail within the first 2 years. And they fail for several reasons, for many reasons. But I think all 3 C's have or could have an effect in making those failures successes. First of all, capital access. No mystery, no secret that since the crisis of 2008, it's been increasingly difficult to obtain capital, to obtain credit, and for many reasons. I'm not going to go into the details as to what caused the crisis and the effects it's having, but it's definitely having a big effect. Businesses need money. Businesses need capital. That is the oil that keeps that machine running. We need to provide more of it. And at the SBA, we realize that given that banks are a little bit more strict in their credit parameters, just to use it in a polite way, we need to provide incentives that are not available right now. And what have we done? Well, first of all, we have increased significantly the incentives we provide to guarantee small business owners their loans. We have several programs like 7A. We provide significant guarantees to the banks, up to 85%. As probably you know, the SBA is not a direct lender. But we make sure that at least 85% of that loan is guaranteed by the federal government, so that that bank is much more willing and able to do and offer that loan. And we have seen the numbers. While the traditional commercial banks have lowered their credit or have lowered the amount that they are lending, we have seen record numbers at the SBA, almost $30 billion. $30 billion in guaranteed loans. So there are opportunities out there. But you would say, yeah, that's great. But every time I go to a bank, I get rejected. Well, we realize that some of it is happening. So the SBA this year has put into effect two programs that I think are critical for the Latino and the Latina small business owners. Number one, we have created a new program called Community Advantage. For the first time, CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions, will be able to lend up to $1/3 and they are mission focused. They know their clients very well. They work and interact with them on a daily basis. They know their credit history. They know that they can pay even if that FICO score is not what it should be, or even if the collateral is not there. So Community Advantage is a program that we just launched. It's been active for just a few months, so I do encourage you to look at it, talk to us, call the SBA, look for us on the internet, sba.gov, or talk to one of our partners, which leads me to the second C, counseling services. Did you know that we have partners across the state that provide counseling services at no cost, zero cost to you as a business owner? We have partners like the SBDCs, Small Business Development Centers, and we have many right here in the city, actually 5 CUNY colleges right here in New York City provide those services. And we are very, very proud of the services provided. Actually, one of them, Brooklyn Tech, has one that is primarily dedicated to the Hispanic small business owners. It's called OLE, Organización de Latinos Empresarios. It's led by a great lady by the name Catalina Castaño in Brooklyn, and they provide free services for you to start or grow your business. If you need a marketing plan, if you need a business plan, if you are going to see that lender for the first time, you need to go prepared. That makes a big difference. That's the difference between failing in those first 2 years or succeeding. Not only do you need capital, you need to have a solid plan. You need to plan so that that business proposition is as strong as it can be. The third C, and with that I will cover very briefly something that I have been asked to cover, which is the American Jobs Act and how it has an effect specifically on Hispanics and Hispanic business owners. The third C is contracting opportunities with the government. You need capital. You need to have a solid business plan. But you also need clients. And what better client than the federal government? The U.S. government spent over $500 billion last fiscal year buying products and services. At the SBA, we have a mandate of making sure that agencies across the entire U.S. government purchase at least 23% from that amount from small businesses. As a matter of fact, if you're Latino or Latina, 5% of those purchases should go to small business owners, where 51% or more are Latinos or Latinas. So again, a lot of really good help, a lot of good information. Talk to us. Talk to the SBA. Talk to the Small Business Development Centers at any of the 8 locations in the city or any of the 24 locations in the state. As a matter of fact, the SBDC, one of our strongest partners in counseling, has an economic study area or division in Albany, at SUNY Albany. If you're thinking of starting a business in one particular sector, call them. They can prepare for you at the end, no cost to you, a white paper on your particular industry. If you want to go into the restaurant business, they will give you a white paper customized to your needs on the state of the restaurant business in New York. And that is at no cost to you again. We have other partners like SCORE, like Women Business Centers across the state. They do a phenomenal job, and I do really encourage you to tap into it. Now, having said what the SBA can do, I also want to highlight very briefly, I've been asked to highlight what the American Jobs Act can do for those business owners, in particular Hispanic business owners. As you probably are aware, the unemployment rate among Hispanics is unacceptably high at 11.3%. If you look at the young Latinos and Latinas, that unemployment rate goes up to 19.3%. That is not only unacceptable, it is truly, truly a waste. 20% of Latino youth unemployed. What can we do? What should we do? Well, some of the provisions of the American Jobs Act would directly benefit no less than 250,000 Hispanic-owned small businesses who would receive tax cuts benefits immediately, a reduction to half of what they pay currently. 1.1 million Hispanics and their families would benefit from the extension of unemployment insurance. 1 million Hispanics who have been out of work for more than 6 months would benefit from the hiring tax credit. And how does that work? Well, if you, as an employer, hire someone who has been unemployed for 6 months or more, you would get at least $4,000 in tax credit to hire that individual, that person. Now, if that unemployed happens to be a veteran, that goes up to $5,600. And if that veteran became disabled in active duty, that goes up to $9,600. That's a very significant incentive, and I truly think it could make a difference, particularly for the veterans. And as you know, Hispanics are overrepresented in the armed forces, so many, many Hispanic veterans could benefit from that incentive. Finally, we have over 25 million Hispanic workers who would benefit from the extension of the payroll tax cut. That again is immediate benefit, cuts the payroll tax cut to half. That's money in everybody's pocket. And on that one, we all benefit. Why? Because that is spending that goes straight to consumer spending, that goes straight to the economy. Finally, as you probably know, there is a significant amount of funding dedicated to infrastructure projects. Did you know that in the U.S. there are over 2.7 million Hispanic construction workers, many of them right here in the state of New York? That would be a dramatic improvement in terms of employment opportunities. If you look at the payroll tax cut, at the employer tax credit, and at the infrastructure spending, we are talking about significant numbers. Objective third-party economists have said that this would be good for the economy. So I do encourage you to take a close look at what the American Jobs Act can offer. And again, I do encourage you to talk to us. SBA.gov, go to our website, call me. I'm right here in New York City. I'll be more than glad, more than pleased to be of assistance at a moment when we need it the most. Latinos and Latinas need it the most, and I'm here to serve in any way and capacity that I can. Thank you so very much for your attention. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Lillian Rodriguez Lopez, President of the Hispanic Federation, and I want to welcome you again to this wonderful luncheon that we're hosting with the New York State Senate, and again acknowledge the wonderful Senator Dean Skelos for asking the Federation to participate in this very important event. I want to comment that Senator Skelos, you noticed the food? No rubber chicken. You had chicken with salsa y arroz con gandules. And the reason I want to mention that is because I saw a couple of people at my table really clean off those plates. So as my father would have said, aquí hay hambre, there is hunger here. And I also do want to acknowledge that we have, as Senator Skelos says, so many wonderful, important people in this room. But I do want to recognize Roberto Ramirez, who also was the first Puerto Rican to serve as a county leader in the county of the Bronx. So thank you, Roberto, for being here, for your support of the Federation, as well as Mr. Miranda. So I get to introduce Guillermo Linares, who is just a deep, deep friend. Dr. Linares, I got to make sure I say that properly, is a member of the New York State Assembly, but Guillermo was the first Dominican elected official in the entire United States. And he's very special because not only is he visionary and he can focus on policy and all of the major issues that are affecting not only the Dominican community but the Latino community across the country, but he's a doer. And so in addition to herding a very large family, he's one of a tribe of like, I don't know, 10 or 11 younger brothers and sisters who are all highly successful in their own right. He also decided that he needed to give back to his community, and he became the first city council member. And then from there, after an illustrious career, he decided to go and work for Michael Bloomberg as the Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, where I have to say, one of the things that makes Guillermo so amazing is that he's always ahead of the curve. He has a lot of courage. And he identifies problems and needs and brings it to the attention of others, but then decides that he's going to roll up his sleeves and develop programs and initiatives and dialogues that are going to take the community to the next level. He's a problem solver. Now he's in the New York State Assembly. We kind of miss him down in the city. I don't know why, but I do know that of all the things that you could be doing that are so impactful and so rewarding to you, you continue to give back to our community and to stay presente. And I hope that we will never lose you in this city and in my world. And on that note, Assemblyman Guillermo Linares.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Lillian. I want to thank you and the board of the Hispanic Federation for extending the invitation to join this conference and to be here today. Those of you who know of me know how close I have been over the years to the Hispanic Federations and to the issues that are addressed through the leadership of the Federation. Issues that I know are being addressed in this weekend, in this conference. Those are issues that are close to my heart and I feel identified with, and it's because they are issues that impact on our families and our communities, and particularly on immigrants. So I want to thank you, Lillian, for extending the invitation. I also want to thank Senator Lynn Skelos and all of these Democratic and Republican senators who took a stand on an issue that I was very aggressive on in my first session as a member of the Assembly. And I want to thank you for really supporting the liberty legislation that passed on both houses in the state. And I say thank you as someone who drove a livery in the early 70s when I entered City College, and we have Jay Hergerson here to attest to that. And I paid my way through college driving at night in the South Bronx and north of 96. So I have been part of this industry over 40 years, working to serve the majority of New Yorkers where yellows don't go. And it is only fair to be able to bring legitimacy to an industry that is purely ours. It is our community. And we have some of them here. say that I learned my way through the State Assembly, and I even found out where the bathrooms were, taking some of them as they came to lobby and they came to request that this piece of legislation be introduced, and we know and are confident that the governor will move forward with it, and we will see coming from the shadows this industry. And the same type of effort and aggressiveness that I brought during my first session in Albany, I intend to bring in the coming session, and I look forward to working with you, Senator Skelos, and all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on an issue very dear to my heart. As the son of undocumented parents, immigrants that came in the 60s to the United States, to New York City, and as someone that, if not because I was able to go and access an education, I would not be here today. I would not have made history, and I would not have been a voice of decision on behalf of immigrants and Latinos and others in this state and our city. Had it not been because we had access to education. And I'm going to work very hard this coming session to make sure that all young people, documented or not, have an opportunity like I had to get access to higher education. And we just passed in California a DREAM Act, and I'm sure that we can come to a consensus in this state of ours to be able to grant that opportunity to young people, regardless of where their background is, with a piece of legislation. So the work is cut out for us moving forward. I think there's one thing that is not Republican or Democrat, but it is of American, it is of New York, and that is our commitment to look for opportunities for our community and for our family. And that's what should be what drives us moving forward. And this is what has been addressed in this conference, and what we'll need to continue, regardless of where we stand, party line. We need to commit to our community and to our families. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker really took time from his very busy schedule to join us this afternoon to speak to this group, and this has been a great lunch. You agree? We enjoyed it? It's my pleasure to introduce Richard Dick Parsons, who is currently the chairman of Citigroup and was formerly the chairman and CEO of Time Warner. Dick Parsons was born in Brooklyn. He attended Albany Law School, where he earned a Juris Doctor and finished at the top of his class. I didn't finish at the top of my class. He went into the private sector and I stayed in government. But we both, I think, really respect and enjoy the career paths that we've taken. He served as an attorney for New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, and he followed the governor down to Washington, D.C., when Rockefeller was appointed Vice President of the United States in 1974. While at the White House, Dick Parsons worked directly for President Ford. He has served as a partner in the law firm of Patterson, Belknap, Webb, and Tyler, and as chairman and CEO of Dime Savings Bank of New York. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome Dick Parsons to Unidad Latina.
Thank you, Senator Skelos, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be an interesting exercise for both of us, since I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to say. In fact, I was just sitting at the table writing as we were. When Kathy first talked to me about doing something with my old friend Dean, she said, come and talk a little bit about the sort of global economy, but this doesn't look like a global economy room right here, right? Or maybe the President's Jobs Council, and that could be interesting, but that should be two-way, because I've got questions for you that it would be interesting for me to hear your views on. But what I thought I'd do is I'd touch on those two things, try and make it relevant to what you're here to hear about and talk about this afternoon, and then, if it's okay, Senator, open it up for Q&A. Is that right? You know? How much time do I have? 15, 20. All right. So I'll go for 10, you'll go for 10.
I like that split.
Hello, William. Yeah, I know her from back when I was with Time Warner, when I was still employed. I don't have a tie on because I'm not employed anymore. My wife actually, be careful of this retirement stuff. It's overrated. My wife for my birthday gave me new business cards. And my new title is The Wizard of Was. You know? If I could get that in Spanish, I'd use it. Gilbert, how are you? Nice to see you, Senator. Okay, so quickly. I know you're here to talk about jobs, talk about the economy, talk about, you know, the Latino community, and I think there's some good news there, but let's start with the bad news, which is state of the world economy. Not good, right? And you have to have a context within which to talk about any of the specific things that you're talking about today. And why is the state of the world economy not good? 3 reasons I would give you. Number 1, growth. The developed markets, as they, you know, United States, Europe, the major developed countries in the world, have really slowed down in terms of their rate of growth because they overborrow. They borrow too much money. They're now having to de-lever, that is to say, ramp down the rate of borrowings, which means they can't invest borrowed money in growth. And why is growth important? Growth is important because people grow. In other words, as the world population grows, each economy needs to expand at least enough to provide new opportunities for those who are coming online, and hopefully a little bit more. We're at a stage in the developed world where our economies are not growing fast enough to keep up with the supply of labor that's being produced by population explosion. So that just means everything slows down in the developed world. It's not true in the emerging world, which is Asia and to some extent Latin America, where growth is still fairly robust, but not nearly enough, and those economies aren't big enough to bring along the rest of the world. So the world is slowing down in terms of how opportunities are coming online, put it that way. And opportunities right now are not coming online at a rate that accommodates the rate of growth in the population, which means that there is literally, the easiest way to think about it is, less to go around for more. How long is that going to last? It's probably going to last a couple of 3 years. It's probably going to last a while. It'll be a while before the world works its way through this mountain of debt that was built up in the Western nations and that artificially supported growth. But now that you know, you have to pay the piper, now that the piper showed up to be paid, and people have to sort of tighten their belts and pay off past indebtedness, things will just take a while to work their way through. Now, the good news is things will work their way through, but it's going to take time. We're going to be in economic pain for a while. And nobody wants to admit it. I mean, that's one of the great things about popularly elected governments. It's very hard for someone to stand up in front of a group who's running for office or who wants to stay in office and say, you know, my friends, there's going to be less to go around next year, and you know, we're all just going to have to tighten our belt, and you know, so to get serious. But that's the reality. That's where we are. Now, that's the giant backdrop on which those of us who were asked by President Obama to serve on his Jobs Council have been asked to, you know, come up with a program that's going to create new jobs, new jobs, because we've got to get people back to work. Well, we do have to get people back to work, but there are no silver bullets. There are no miracle cures for the structural phenomenon I just described. But there is some good news there. And the good news is that what this exercise has caused literally the entire federal government to, and others, is to focus on the source of new jobs, which is small business. Small businesses now, I mean, you can go down to where I live downtown and not too far from Bugatti Park and see a whole bunch of people picketing against, Wall Street, big banks, big business. We're all in bad odor right now, but the heroes of the American landscape are small businesses. So that everything that, well, not entirely everything, most of what we've been focused on in the Jobs Council is how to stimulate a stronger, more vibrant small business community and new business startups, because that's where 80% of job growth comes from businesses that are starting and getting going. And again, you can slice the apple any which way you want to. The reality of job creation, however, is you need two things to start a business. You need management. You need somebody who's got a concept of a business and who's prepared to put their shoulder to the wheel and apply their head and talents to the effort of creating and building a business. So you need management on the one hand, and you need capital. That is to say, money. Those are the two elements that any business that you can think of needs to succeed. That helps to have a good idea. It helps to have a lot of people behind you. But without the management, without the capital, you're not going to go very far. So we've been focused on how to find and nurture the management talent. This is an effort that's been headed up by a former colleague of mine, a guy named Steve Case. Steve was the guy who bought us AOL and a bunch of other sort of new age, newfangled things. And Steve's been spearheading an effort to find entrepreneurial talent and help develop it, nurture it. And then lots of us have been focused on how to increase financing for startup and small businesses, because that's where usually the problem occurs. I'm sure many of you out here, particularly those of you who are in small business right now, if I said to you, small business community, how easy is it to get, access to capital? Easy, hands up. Not so easy, both hands up. I think I'd see a lot of hands out here, because that's what we hear all the time when we go around the country. Everybody says, I just can't get, the banks won't lend. The government is too complicated to access. There was a gentleman up here from small business a minute ago, and part of the effort that they're making in small business is to try and streamline and make more accessible the many funding programs that they have, but they kill you with the paperwork, right? So when I said to you, one of the things that would be interesting for me to hear from you is what would make it, what would help on the financing side? How do we, either in terms of supply chain financing, accelerate the turn of your money in terms of access to loans and venture capital? What things can we do? What things can we suggest to the President be done? What things can the New York State Senate and Assembly do to make your access, or your ability to get access to capital easier and more flexible? So when we get to the Q&A session, I'd sort of be interested in hearing that. The last thing I'd talk about, though, and of particular relevance to the Hispanic community, is I don't know how as a nation we've gotten ourselves wrapped around this immigration issue so perversely, right? I was the other day at a Carnegie Institute awarding of medals to major philanthropists. And it was curious to me as I sat there and saw these families who were being recognized for the levels of philanthropy that they've risen to, that they've been giving back more. Andrew Carnegie himself, a Scottish immigrant, the family after family after family, all had sort of immigrant roots. I mean, that's been the source of America's, strength over the course of 2.5 centuries, right? And now we're at a place where people are seriously considering, how do we pull up the ladder? I mean, it's totally nuts. Half of the Fortune 500 companies were either started by immigrants or the first generation, right? Half of the Fortune 500 companies. It's like we've lost our mind. And obviously the fastest growing and most vibrant community from that perspective in the United States today is the Hispanic community. And I just think somehow or another, that community, as well as the rest of us who haven't lost our minds, have to kind of coalesce and deliver a message to our elected officials that, you folks are on the wrong path with what you're trying to do. So, enough of that, enough proselytizing. Because I'm not running for anything. I'm the, how do you say, Wizard of Was in Spanish? Questions?
John? First of all, I do want to thank you for being here, and I absolutely remember you. You were my gala chair several years ago at Hispanic Federation, so thank you for that. A couple of things. One is, in terms of growth of small businesses, one of the things that we've been struggling with on a national level is actually very corporate and business driven, which is the ability of small businesses, particularly minority businesses, to get into the supplier diversity system for large corporations, either on tier 1 or tier 2. So that would be something that could be very powerful for our businesses. The second thing is that on a national level, there are many organizations that certify businesses, but there is no Latino-led institution, including the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that helps Latinos. We have the National Minority Business Council, but we have a lot of our businesses where the business owners are Spanish dominant to bilingual and really could use the resources and information in a much more culturally competent way. And the third one is on the access to capital issue. We also have been struggling with a lot of the larger banks because they will say, you're not at scale to get this support in terms of the financing, but we can't get the scale because we don't have the financing. So I think it's about a broader dialogue that really talks to the reforms if we really want to grow and make the sector more powerful. What is the most important? And here's a question, those are comments. Do you believe, Dick Parkins is all the time, do you believe that the green economy is the growing economy and the way to go for a lot of the small businesses around the country?
It was good to you ask that question. So just a few comments on your comments, and I'll come back to your question. Again, just because, as you try, each of you, and negotiate in your private life to sort of make it work, it helps to understand the larger forces that are impacting on decisions that are going to be made about you and about your enterprise. The banks. And why are the banks more of a problem now than they were? Because the banks are under assault, not just down in Zuccotti Park from Occupy Wall Street, but from the regulatory establishment. They said, look, you guys were responsible, you guys lent out money to anybody who couldn't afford it, you brought us this disaster, so everybody's got to pull up their socks and not lend to risky businesses. And banks are responsive to that. And so that's actually made it tougher, right, for small businesses trying to get access to capital. What some of the banks are doing, and what we're trying now to get the federal government to get on board with, is creating mechanisms that allow small businesses that are in the supply chain, that supply larger businesses with goods and products and things that then get, sort of combined in a larger sales enterprise, to leverage the balance sheet of the bigger enterprise. So, for example, at Citi, one of the things we have is a very robust supply chain finance operation where if you have a small business and you are dealing with, I'll just pick a name, GE, you provide GE the plastic stuff that they wrap around their bulbs or something. What we'll do with GE is we'll say, look, you qualify. You tell us they're one of your customers, and whenever, in essence, you get their invoice, which can take 60 days, 90 days to pay. As soon as you get your invoice, you let us know. We'll pay it for you, and we will effectively lend the money to the smaller business on your balance sheet and strength. So I think the more that you can see that model replicated, I mention it because those of you who are in business might think about going to your suppliers, the guys who supply, and say, hey, look, I heard about this thing. We should, if I'm qualified, I'd like to do it, because it turns around your cash flow a lot quicker. We're trying to get the federal government to do the same thing now, because they're the biggest purchaser in the United States, right? They purchase $100 billion a year of stuff from small businesses. Now, if you can sort of turn it around, turn that cash flow around quicker, it solves some of the cash flow problems. The issue of getting qualified, we are now working with, this is relatively new, but again, I would encourage any of you who have small businesses to sort of talk to the people that you supply with goods and services. There's now a clearinghouse that's being run out of IBM, but that's just temporary, the IBM Foundation, where all the major entities are listing the companies with whom they do business and effectively serving as a reference for, say, well, if you're looking for somebody who can provide corrugated, boxes or something like that, we use Lillian's, box company located in the Bronx, New York, and we vouch for them so that there's at least, an index and a clearinghouse of, in essence, pre-certified small businesses. So things are happening, but those of you who have ideas, I would encourage you to sort of bring them forward, because right now, as I said, there's a sort of a hothouse effect for small businesses in terms of what can we do to make it better, to make it more fertile, to make it more flexible. So any ideas people have, you can send them to me. It's easy. It's richard.parsons@citi.com, or send them to the President's Jobs Council, and they'll be seriously considered. In terms of your question, I'm having a hard time getting on this green thing. I mean, not that it is not important, but to me, it's sort of like the digital thing. It's coming, and we're trying to accelerate its coming. Everybody in my old business, Time Warner. I was talking to Kathy about this on the way here. I remember we did the deal with AOL 10 years ago. Steve K said, movies, television, they're all dead tree businesses. You guys are out of work. We're the future. You should just give us all your stuff and let us deal with it. Not so fast. It's still hard to make money, right? It's still hard to make money in digital advertising in the digital world. It's going to be hard to make money in green for a while, a lot of money. So is it important? Yes. Should people be getting on that train now? Yes. But is it going to solve today's problems? No, not in my judgment. Yes, sir.
Mr. Parsons, you said that we're facing probably at least another couple of years in this challenging economic time. And my question was, what can the Hispanic community do, especially young families, do to try to secure affordable housing, right, and to achieve the goal, the American dream of home ownership, especially with the prices in the real estate market and the reluctance of lenders to make loans available or to create, like you said, a paper tiger to achieve, residential mortgage loans?
Well, I think actually there are, on the inside or the outside, I don't know which it is, with every cloud there's a silver lining or silver cover. I mean, there are real bargains, if you will, in the residential real estate markets right now, because we overbuilt. I mean, if you were to say, well, what really happened there? We way overbuilt. We created a supply of housing for which there wasn't actually a legitimate, sustainable demand. So that has to kind of come off, as well as we lent money and people couldn't pay it back. So there are houses out there that are selling at reasonable prices, and rates are as attractive as they're going to be. So So for those families that have financial security and sustenance that can sustain that, I think they're real bargains. But if you were to say to me, what's the one thing that I would say to the Hispanic community, or for that matter, the black community, or any of the immigrant communities, particularly in America, that you can do for long-term improvement of the group, I think some of them said it earlier. It's got to be education. It's got to be the civil right of the 21st century. It is the passport to a secure future. Without it, you are. You are in a place where the only thing you can look for, or two, to sustain you going forward would be sort of government safety nets and aids, and those are going to be hard pressed as we go forward. So people are going to. I think we're entering in a time where more self-sufficiency as opposed to less is going to become important, and the bedrock of that's going to be education.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons, my name's Andy Sullivan, and I'm from the 9/11 Hard Hats. And I'm in the construction industry, and I work with, I'm going to say, 85% Latinos. And some of the most hardworking Americans are Latinos. They remind me of my father and myself years ago, the Irish, when we came here. And we had to start from the bottom and work our way up. But the one thing that I find, which is a really a barrier for Latinos, is the language. And really learning the English language, because I see a lot of guys get hurt, and women too, get hurt because of the communication factor. And also, is there a vehicle that maybe can help with that? And also, I find a lot of undocumented immigrants are hurting the documented immigrants. Can you please comment on those two things?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by your first observation, because it hasn't been my observation. I was born and raised here and worked in lots of different jobs, including driving a cab for a while. And while it became in vogue maybe 20 years ago to say, New York was a bilingual community, I found that the only people who were bilingual were the Hispanics. I mean, they spoke Spanish and English. And the quote Americans only spoke English. But I, now that you mentioned it, I can see, particularly reading, I can see how it might be an issue, or obviously what you've observed is an issue. I hadn't thought about it much. I do think this. I think that again, the ultimate answer to that question is what we were talking about before. It's continued educational thrust in terms of the undocumented workers. It's a complicated problem, and there are no complicated problems that have solutions that everyone hails, that don't create some of their own problems, right? So if you try and move against the undocumented worker to protect the documented worker, it creates its own kind of backlash. And I think that's what you got going on in the southwestern part of the United States. One of the reasons that New York, in my judgment, did not swoon the way the rest of the country did earlier in the last decade, when sort of the economy was in a tailspin. Two reasons. One, New York's an international city now, so wherever it is happening around the world, a fair number of those people come to New York and leave their dollars. I will tell you something caught me by surprise. What would you say, Senator Skills, is the percentage of Brazilians who are in any cohort visiting Statue of Liberty? That is to say, what percentage of visitors to Statue of Liberty are Brazilians? 40%. Can you believe that? 40%. 40% of the people who are going to Statue of Liberty today or yesterday or tomorrow are from Brazil. Amazing. Why? Brazil's got money. And people with money come to New York. So that's a good thing. The second thing was we didn't close our doors to immigrants. So when the rest of the country was saying, well, we don't want them here, undocumented workers, they take legitimate jobs and so on and so forth, we found a way to accommodate what has always been part of New York's secret sauce, right? Being a melting pot, being a place that invited talent and labor and drive and initiative, regardless of its ethnic origins. And it kept New York's economy vibrant. So while I think you're right that, quote, some of the undocumented are squeezing out some of the documented from that lower rung, I don't know how I don't know how you create a system that is in perfect balance where everybody is, quote, documented, and those who aren't are what? Are sent home or excluded from opportunity. I haven't figured that out. So I would opt for the messiness of always having some undocumented workers, because who comes, you know? Who comes to America? People who have, you know, what do you want? You want people who have get up and go. Who comes? People who got up and went, right? That's how you build a country, or at least a country like this one. One more question and then? Oh, done. Thank you for your tolerance.
Wow, what an honor. We're all blessed to have Dick Parsons here. Let's give him another round of applause. As a graduate of Albany Law School, and I was sitting in Professor Sandra Stevenson's class back in the day, talking about our good friend who thought I would have the opportunity to follow him up. And really, the theme of his success of pursuing the American dream is the reason why I'm here recognizing a businessman from my Senate district, which is the 3rd Senate District. Today is a day following the decision of our president to bring our troops home from Iraq by the end of 2011, and I spent some time thinking about Juan Santiago, who is my E5 sergeant responsible for protecting me over there. Even though I outranked him, he certainly had a lot more experience to keep me safe. He was pursuing his American dream, serving over there. Then in his 3rd deployment, back home, he had 2 kids. The sacrifice of his family, his wife, his 2 kids, to allow him to pursue his American dream, which was to protect and defend our Constitution and liberties as an American soldier, is something that I think about today. Today, we recognize a gentleman who was from El Salvador. When he came to America to pursue his American dream, it started as a dishwasher at Mario's restaurant in Suffolk County. But he took it to the next level and became an entrepreneur, a small business owner, and opened up a company, a restaurant that has grown to be most successful. And if any of you go to Brentwood, 85 Timberline Drive in Brentwood is where you can find Kamalapa Restaurant. Now, it's a reason why we're acknowledging him here today, not just for the success of his restaurant, but for his dedication and commitment to his community. A sponsor of Jumps for Hoops, the American Cancer Society, the founding member for the first Central American and Mexican Day Parade, the Vice President of Salvadorian American Alliance, President of the Salvadorian Chamber of Commerce, Vice President of the Brentwood Lions, and the list goes on and on. His dream was not only to be successful in business, but to serve his community. My district, which, as Senator Skelos mentioned, has one of the largest in the state of Hispanics. It's, the El Salvadorian population is quite large, and he is a leader of it. And that is why today we recognize him for this conference's 2011 Business Achievement Award. And I'd like to bring up Santiago Reyes.
muy buenas tardes. Ok. En primer lugar, quiero dar gracias a Dios por estar esta tarde tan especial acá en esta reunión muy especial. Y así un poco rápido, porque sé que el tiempo no está claro, estamos cortos. Yo vengo de El Salvador, vine hace 31 años, como cualquier inmigrante. Vine a lavar los platos, a barrer, a limpiar los restaurantes. Pero gracias a Dios creí en el sueño americano. Ahora soy parte de la familia de Small Business en New York. Tengo 2 compañías, un restaurante y una compañía de limpieza, All American Cleaning Service. Y gracias a negocios como los pequeños que estamos ahora, el país en el tiempo que está se ha mantenido la economía y la mediana empresa también. Y me siento orgulloso de poder echar adelante con mi familia, mi esposa que está allá, mi hija que está allá con la cámara. Somos una familia unida, echando para adelante. Este país no va a caer con nosotros, porque cada día lo levantamos en el nombre de Dios, abrimos 7 días a la semana, y de 10 a 10 estamos abiertas las puertas para trabajar y echar adelante. Así es que esto me enorgullece creer en el sueño americano, porque eso es lo que debemos de pensar cada inmigrante que viene. Una vez más, les doy las gracias a cada uno de ustedes.
So I'm not going to do justice to what Santiago just said in Spanish. Very eloquent. Typical American story, typical immigrant story. Came here, worked, whatever he can find work in the food service industry primarily, and, is living the American dream. Today he owns his restaurant, and he is very grateful for the opportunity that this country has had. And he wants to mention to everyone here that immigrants are the backbone of this country, of this nation, of this state. So those are his words, and again, I didn't do justice, but that's what he was trying to say.
Okay, I'm sorry because at the beginning I started with English, but I love you my own language, Spanish. Okay, Senator Sheldon, Senator Esquelo, and all delegation, Republican delegation, I want to say thank you very much, because today made me happy, me and my family. They recognize all my sacrifice, because in the area I'm working hard with the Spanish community for different things. Thank you very much, and try to enjoy this kind of event. Thank you.
Okay. Now this is tough. You have to follow Dick Parsons and an American success story. So, and I'm not even making a speech. I'm just tapping on what's going to be the rest of the schedule for the afternoon. Obviously, we had a successful morning, and I think the lunch has gone great. So we have 3 more workshops, and I want to highlight those. One of them is going to be sponsored and moderated by my colleague, Senator Klein, who is the chair of the Alcohol and Substance Abuse Committee, and that is addressing Latino health disparities. That will be in Central Park East. That's one of the rooms right outside. We will also have Senator Golden moderating supporting Latino small businesses in the Central Park West room. And then we will have co-moderators for increasing Latino college success. Senator Martins, who had obviously gotten up and spoken previously to the group, and Assemblywoman Maliotakis will be co-moderating that. I think these things have worked out very well. And I'm just going to parenthetically add, as legislators, we have a fundamental obligation to listen. And frankly, if we're going to learn and then turn those words into action, we really have to pay attention. And you've heard some wonderful speakers here today. We are going to follow that up with a roundtable with a group of CUNY students who want to talk about public service. So I had a chance to glance at the resumes of these young men and women. If you have a chance to stick around and listen to this roundtable, you don't really want to listen to the people like me who are going to be part of that roundtable. You want to listen to these students, because their resumes, even before they really become quote-unquote adults, are stellar and very impressive. So they want to talk to us about public service and see what we can impart to them. I have a feeling we're going to learn a lot more from them than the other way around. And then, of course, after that, there will be the reception tonight and the dinner. And Senator Skelos, I think, is still with Mr. Parsons right now. So on behalf of Senator Skelos, we just want to thank you for attending the luncheon. And the 2 o'clock workshops are about to start. So thank you very much.